This is the Schwinn World GSE or GS electric bike. These came out around 2007 to 2009 timeframe, and they actually had some really amazing features given that year, and it still holds strong today. This is actually a bike that's owned by the former mayor of Fort Collins, Ray Martinez. Really nice guy. I saw him riding around town and said, hey, that's an electric bike. Like, cool, let's talk about it. And he's been generous to let me do a quick review and kind of talk about the aspects of this bike in case you see one at a garage sale. He actually got his at Recycled Cycles. They're a business here in town that kind of takes used bikes, fixes them up, and sells them to people. And he's had this for like 4 years, since 2010, and it's still going strong. The battery on this thing is actually pretty impressive. So what we're looking at is a 26.6 volt, 10 amp hour lithium polymer pack. It's got this nice little light up feature. When you press the button there, it shows you how much battery capacity is remaining. When they built this bike, they advertised that it would take about 4 hours to charge from empty, and it would get a range of about 60 miles. Ray's told me he gets about 20 miles per charge, which is still pretty good considering the age on this thing, 5 years. You can, of course, make your battery last longer by topping it off every once in a while, every time you use it, in fact, and then keeping it maybe stored inside or just in a moderate temperature environment. If it's really hot or it's really cold, that can damage it. This battery is removable, which is pretty cool. This is what you have to kind of unlock with the key to get it off. That makes it convenient for charging inside if you're at the office using it to commute. And then you have to actually leave the key in when riding. So you stick it in, it's an off, and then you twist it to that little red dot, and then it has to dangle here, which is a little bit annoying, but they're not the only bikes that have that. Some of the older Pedagos also require that you leave the battery in. When you want to turn it on, there's a little switch right up here. When you flick that, it shows you the battery capacity, just with a simple LED voltmeter, but it works pretty well. And I was surprised to see that this one actually has a throttle right here. It doesn't work unless you're going a couple miles per hour, and that's a safety feature, but it also uses a pedal X sensor. So the way that works is there's this little plastic disc, there's magnets inside of it, and then there's this sensor right here, and as the sensor sees the magnets going by, it tells the bike to go. It sends power to the motor, okay? So it's pretty standard, and I found it to be fairly smooth given that there's only 4 magnets. There are 8 little slots, but only 4 magnets in it. Some of the newer pedelec systems have up to 12 magnets, but again, this one's using a little bit more of a gentle motor. You can see it says 180 watt. It's a geared front hub motor. Rated voltage 24 volts, current 9.9 amps, rated speed 235 rotations per minute. And this is by Protanium. So kind of interesting. A lot of the newer electric bikes have like 250, 350, 500, all the way up to 750 watt motors. In this case, for just an around town sort of commuter bike, this is pretty good. And I like that the weight of the motor balances out the battery pack in the rear. Just keeps this thing nice and stable. And frankly, Ray's got a sort of a pack on his rear rack, but you could put panniers because it's got these blockers on the side so they won't hit your spokes, and that would work out pretty well too. I love that it's got full-length fenders, front and rear, with these nice little mud flaps. The tires on this thing are actually pretty nice as well. They're sort of hybrid style, so you can see the tread isn't too knobby. That's going to help it roll more efficiently. They are 700 by 40C, which is sort of more like a road bike, but again, the tires are a little bit bigger, which is going to add some comfort. Speaking of comfort, it's got this, fairly decent suspension fork in the front. It's not overdone. It's not super huge to add a lot of weight, but it's nice and soft when you're going over bumps. And they've got this great seat post shock too, so that helps a lot. Another feature worth calling out here is the quick release on the rear wheel. That makes it really easy to service the spokes or the rim, and in this case, a tire replaced that. I'm not sure if this came with pre-slimed tires or not, but it has one now. And then, of course, on the front wheel, as is the case with many electric bikes, it's just sort of bolted on. So if you needed to service this, you'd have to remove those yourself. Not terrible, but not quite as convenient. One of the advantages of having a front hub motor is that you get a little less complexity in the rear. You can imagine there's already chain, the cogs, derailleur, all that's happening back here. And when you add a motor, it just adds even more weight, and of course, just wires things to deal with. So it's nice for that reason to have a hub motor on the front, and in the case of this bike, balances with the battery. But one downside is there's increased weight on the front, so it impacts steering a little bit. It can even cause speed wobbles. So I was riding this with no hands at higher speeds, and then I noticed that the handlebars started to do this, right? That's called speed wobble. So this is another kind of thing that I noticed, and worth keeping in mind as you consider electric bikes with hub motors or something maybe with a mid-drive, some of the newer systems like that. And the ergonomic grips, slightly swept back handlebars, adjustable stem. Not bad at all. And I think the price on these was between $1,500 and $2,000 at the time. This was definitely cutting edge technology. Let's see if there's anything else to talk about here. We do have the twist shifters, 3 speeds on the left. That controls the front chain rings. And 8 speeds on the right. SRAM 3.0 comp, so it's 24 speeds total. Here's the derailleur in the back. Not bad. You've got a lot of range there for pedaling up hills or reaching higher top speeds. And in my experience with this bike, I was able to hit like 25 miles per hour in pedal assist mode. So it's almost like a speed pedelec. The motor kept on going, and that's kind of neat, because a lot of electric bikes cut out around 20 miles per hour, and I think that's the case for the Throttle here, definitely. But the pedal assist, and I'm pretty light too. That's probably part of it. I'm like 135 pounds, 5'9". Anyway, the pedals here, they're just sort of plastic, nothing too special, not quite as stiff or grippy, because they've got this rubber grip if it gets wet. Keep that in mind if you're riding around in the rain. You don't want to slip off or something. A lot of new electric bikes have disc brakes. These are just the Pro Max rim brakes, linear pull front and rear. But the neat thing about these brake levers is that they actually cut power to the motor. So when you pull on the brake lever, there's that extra wire, and it's going to tell the motor to quit, which is just a nice safety feature. Not all bikes have that, but most of them do. It's just cool that this one had it for being a little bit older. Maybe it's time to hop on and do a little ride test with this thing and show you what the motor looks like up close. So let's do it. Okay. By the way, that little display right there was added by Ray. It just helps you tell how fast you're going. So I'm going to put the motor, or the camera, down by the motor, and you can see if you hear it. A lot of noise around here right now. It's like a plane and lawnmower and stuff, but it's really a quiet motor. Just kind of a slight whirring sound to it. There aren't any pedal assist levels to choose from. It just does its own thing. Some of the newer bikes have multiple levels, so you can be like, oh, gentle, and that'll help the battery go further. Regardless, let's see here. And that's why we like electric bikes, because they aren't super loud and annoying, and they don't pollute the neighborhood. Okay, so anyway, the motor, let's do that again. There you go. Not bad. And like I said, you can get this thing going a little bit faster, like up to 25 miles per hour when you're really pedaling. And the efficiency of pedal assist with your input happening is going to extend the range on this thing. So it's hard to say exactly how far you'd get. It depends on your weight and the weather and stuff, but it should be at least 25 miles. And again, it kind of depends on the battery pack. Woo! There's 25 right there. Yeah, I mean, just overall, woo, it's a pretty nice bike. Be careful if you're getting on and off. You kick that like I just did and trip. Yeah, that's the Schwinn World GSE electric bike with the Protanium motor. For more info on this and other electric bikes, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com.